I actually think all the time about Russians, like the Russian people. One,
Mm,
because I know a lot of Russian people, like in my personal life, but also I grew up reading all the Russians, and
yeah.
I feel so kind of like deeply bad that I do this kind of like online thing of like being an anti-Russian person. But it
Mm-hmm.
is like, dude, Russian culture is cool. Like I mean, everything about it is cool aside from the political apparatus that happens to be doing evil in the world. Leading to the deaths of what a couple thousand people per day. Because of what they're doing with their government. And you do at some level have to separate the people from, I mean, this is just like an obvious ass thing. Like, I don't need to say this, but I feel this more now that Trump is back in office because it's so, man, when people talk about like America as if like it's Trump's America,
Right.
I didn't vote for the guy. I don't like the guy. I have no association with his movement. And so I feel that same way for people in Russia. So kind of like, I'm sure so many people there are just like totally good people, totally like putting out art or whatever they're doing, like just being awesome humans. And it's
Uh,
unfortunate, like the whole government thing, the whole state apparatus thing that we associate our identities with. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate. I don't know.
It is a shame. I was having a conversation with a Russian gentleman a couple months back. We were renovating a wine shop. He's very educated, and he was very like, yeah, he's like, man, Russian culture is insane. He's like, the arts are so prioritized there. It's held up as something extremely important to do with your life, and it's taken extremely seriously. It seems like they
Mm.
really have a work ethic towards art that spread across the entire globe. A lot of our dance and acting still, like, core tenets of dance and core tenets of acting come from the Russian schools of dance and acting. When will the human experience be unshackled by fucking idiots like Vladimir Putin and whoever else the fuck is stealing and suppressing the will of their people? Man, it is a crime. These people are so funny. They think they're building a legacy for themselves. They're building like a criminal legacy. They're becoming ignominious. They're becoming notorious. They think they're becoming like they think they're becoming saints. They're like, history is going to look at Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin uncharitably, dude.
Unless they win history, that's the whole thing is the people
Yeah.
who win history get to write history. Although I actually don't know, like this is a little bit of like a Michael Shermer-ism, but he always says that the moral arc of history bends towards justice and that sort of thing. There might actually be something to that even if like America joins the axis of Russia and China and Iran, like we join up with the bad guys. Even so, like in the ultimate arc of history, thousands of years from now, I think that the moral arc will bend towards judging that whole thing, that domineering badness and the trampling on the little guy and not respecting borders and just mercilessly killing people that don't need to be killed. Like history will judge that. So I think that you are totally right. Ultimately, yeah.
It's really interesting to me. I mean, if you think about most of like the destructive political movements of the last 100 years, any of them perpetrated by like middle-aged people or young people?
Mm.
No. Right? I mean, it's like we got to have a cutoff date for when you don't get to be in power anymore, period, just as a function of your age. Because you can't, because your ability to be relevant to what's happening and give a fuck about it is so the actual functional ability for you to do that is very minimal. And it feels like so much of the bullshit that we have to deal with is held over power from a previous generation. You know what I'm saying? It's like let people from 30 to 65 innovate and run things, and like after 70, like go live a life doing something that doesn't give you functional control over the lives of young and middle-aged people. I mean, it's just, there's no reason for it. We've never done like unless it's like an emperor situation or something like that. Old people are fucking hanging. They're in the guest house. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, Hitler was youngish. That's that. There's a couple there's a couple out there that are like, you know, charismatic leaders that have taken charge of a population. But generally, I mean, especially the gerontocracy in this fucking country, man, I'm like, whoa, you know what I
I mean,
mean?
look at JD Vance. JD Vance is my age.
Oh, okay, that's true. That's a good point.
He is, I don't know, the most pro-Russian, anti-Ukraine type of American you can even be. It seems like.
Yeah.
I want to psychoanalyze this just a little bit. Right this second, as we're sitting here, I'm having a little back and forth on Twitter with
Delightful.
an account, like a right-wing account, and
Okay.
I posted like Bernie Sanders, you know, saying that something pro
Moment.
Ukraine. And how, like, you know, I forget what I posted, but in any case, here's the commentary was from this right-wing account. Zelensky is a dictator. And I posted back, it says Russia and no other serious country. And then the response was, please, the US media was saying it before Russia invaded. Guess what? Two dictators can go to war against each other, like Stalin and Hitler. Duh. I don't even know where to begin with this. Like, everything about this is just fundamentally upside down, backwards, and insane. Like, people don't live in reality. And I think that people like JD Vance are making it easy for people to live in bizarro world where the narrative, I don't even know how to step into like a mindset like that. That literally is, the sky isn't blue to me. Do you understand where this comes from, like, at all?
I mean, the only thing that I can kind of draw as a point of reference is that it feels like somebody is hearing something from a source that they believe and back engineering the justification for it. Because you can kind of do that with anything. You know, it's like you can kind of contort yourself into any shape to fit the narrative that is most comfortable to you. I mean, that's something that we're, as humans, we're just very, very good at, and to our detriment mostly, because that was
you just have to know nothing about history and nothing about Russia and what they do. Like, if you look through history of Europe, Eastern Europe, and just that region, it's a history of Russia conquering its neighbors. Yeah, like Finland and everybody. Like, they go in and they conquer all of their neighbors, and then they lose them, and they conquer again. That is the history of that region, and Russia is always the aggressor. Always. Maybe not always, you know. I'm sure that others have started some stuff. Germany certainly did, but do we know what we're talking about? Do we know who Vladimir Putin is and what he wants, and what he said for decades it wants was just like to reunite the USSR, that sort of thing? Like, you just have to ignore every basic fact.
I know, but I think unfortunately we're in a world now where the average person can believe that they're politically informed without any kind of backbone and political philosophy, any real kind of bellwether to what's actually happening, because we're so inundated with information all the time. Quite frankly, dumbass people have the tendency to believe that they are educated and informed. And like, I would consider myself to some degree a dumbass person that believes they're educated and informed. I actually am educated and informed, but I think still, like, you have to titrate your self-perception of how much you know with how much you know that you can't know at the moment. However, man, there's so many people in the middle of the country that 50 years ago would have probably gladly told you that they don't know shit about politics and it's not important to them. And now, just like everybody's supposed to be an entrepreneur in the United States, everybody's supposed to have an informed political opinion about geopolitical events, right? Like, it's not just it's not local or regional or national stuff. It's like everybody is in some degree expected to weigh in and have some opinion on geopolitical events. And it's just like, hey man, not everybody's built for that level of cognitive engagement, just quite frankly, and nor should everyone be.
Totally. What bugs me though, more than anything, even that doesn't even really bug me. What bugs me is just that whatever Donald Trump says, whatever he pivots to, automatically his followers just like go right along with him. This account that I'm chatting with on Twitter, guaranteed, if tomorrow Trump and JD Vance were like, just, did a double take on their perspective about like, and just said, Putin is the devil. Let's be totally clear. And Zelensky is a great leader of a democratic nation in Europe, and they should be part of NATO, and et cetera. They just started saying the opposite of what they're saying.
Yeah.
This account would say that, like, you'd be parroting Donald Trump in that world too. And that's what bugs me. Like, I don't like that. I just have zero respect for.
But I also think like we're in a world where people are very fatigued, man. I think people are very fatigued by the expectation to know so much. And I think that one of the reasons why tough and certain men rule the world still is because as life is becoming more and more complex and is growing in layers of complexity and responsibility and like all of these kind of knowledge bases that you're expected to pull from when you literally just live like a normal daily life. I think everybody is looking for some guidance. And when you're kind of like a hand-wringing Democrat where you're like, well, I feel like we should, kind of push it in this direction because that's kind of the best thing to do. That's already too kind of waffly, I think, for the average person that just wants to get married to a politician and not have to think about fucking, it's like you get married, you were the girl for a long time. You don't have to, every time you walk into a room, you're not scanning the room for like the pretty girls anymore. You're just kind of like, you get to kind of take that top line thought process off your mind. And I think that a lot of people are in that vein with Donald Trump in politics right now, where they're just like, I like this guy. He's colloquial. He seems like he's a fighter. He's a business guy. It's like all of the writ large stuff. They're like, I can get on board with this guy as like a persona or as a, really as an artifice, right? Like as a tableau, you know what I'm saying? And I think it allows people to really just kind of turn off that part of the critical thinking that most people just don't have the spare room for, man. Most people aren't built to have that level of cognitive engagement with reality. That's a very collegiate, it's a very collegiate thing to be like, well, you know the history of Russia, right? I'm like, well, yeah, I do. You know what I mean? But like the guy that you're arguing with, he's probably a roofer. He's probably like an electrician in like Minnesota or something, you know what I mean? Like it, or maybe not, or maybe he could be like a pundit, a personal pundit or something like that. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
There's some right-wing troll-ishness happening with this particular account. I think that's partly the vibe I get to, but
could be a fucking Russian bot.
I mean, this is actually an interesting thing to me, is that I do have close friends, like actually close friends, who I don't know 100% where they stand on Ukraine, Russia, just to stick with this. But if anything negative is said about Zelensky or Ukraine, they get animated about that and they get excited. And if anything negative is said about Putin, they get kind of like, they become willing to stand up for Putin.
Oh,
and I just do not understand that perspective. I mean, like, where do those instincts even come from? I mean,
I'm with you there.
I actually think it might come straight from Russian propaganda.
Yeah.
There are accounts, I mean, Tim Pool and that other like list of accounts that are still going like hard anti-Ukraine. They literally got tons of money from Russia. And people who listen to them, you just start parroting the opinions of the people you listen to, right? So, but like, dude, don't listen to accounts that got money from Russia. Like if any of the people that I listen to, I find out they got money from Russia, like I'm cutting them out. I'm not listening to them anymore. Like the Russia propaganda machine is very robust and they're good at this, guys. Yeah. So like you have to be mindful of the fact that anything that seems pro-Russian, it might be a meme that they put there intentionally. And that's like where you start, and you have to start there, just like knowing that's what they do and like that they're great at it. So be suspicious. Absolutely be suspicious.
I also don't understand where these instincts come from, because if republicanism is what it says it is, and it's kind of like isolationist and protectionist, and and it's really trying to defend like an American ideal for us, by us, whatever the fuck, and then liberalism, neoliberalism, the Democratic Party is about being inclusive and everybody's a special person and they all deserve respect and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, stay on those fucking sides then, guys, because like, yeah, it's okay that we have a party that's like, hey man, like Russians are people too. We can't be believing everything we hear about them, blah blah blah. Not everyone's our enemy. We actually do still need a party that goes, you guys are our enemies and we're not doing business with you. Like,
yeah, I wanted to, hopefully you can see my screen here. I wanted to read this tweet from Ian Bremmer from 6 hours ago. He tweeted, "If I were a foreign adversary of the United States, core policies I would support: 1, leaving NATO and the UN; 2, shutting down foreign aid; 3, dismantling the professional U.S. bureaucracy; 4, removing safeguards for epidemics and disease."
Right.
This is exactly what the Trump administration plus Elon, this is what they're doing. Like, they're going down the list of things that our adversaries would like us to do. 100%. And the other day, Peter Zion, who I like, political,
me too,
geopolitical analyst, he went down a list of things that he would do if he were Trump or in the Trump administration. And it was all basically the opposite of this list of that Ian Bremmer has put here, which is kind of interesting. There's definitely like parallel thinking between these two in this regard. And so Peter Zion was saying that, like, right now, Russia is very weak. They're very weakened. So is Iran, and China is also looking ahead to a demographic collapse in the next decade. They're very weak and vulnerable in a lot of different ways. So this is the time, this 4-year period that Trump has, this is the time to really strengthen our allies and to box in our adversaries and to make it so that they do not get to tell the story of the next century.
Yeah.
We're doing the opposite. We are pulling back. We are weakening our allies and weakening the institutions upheld by our allies, weakening ourselves. And we're letting Russia and our adversaries write history, write world global history in our stead and in our place, and we're just like signing off with like their vision of the world going forward.
It's absolutely bizarre.
It's not good. It's not good at all. And just like, this is one more thing, not quite entirely related, but it's up on my screen, so let me just say it. I hate the fact that everyone in the Trump administration just cannot, for the life of them, just state basic facts and just live in the real world. And so, this is a CNN thing that's on my screen. Fact check: 33 times Zelensky thanked America and U.S. leaders. And there was that J.D. Vance here. Let me. I like this little meme here.
But you know what? I hope the Democratic Party takes from this is that you do have to talk to the American people like fourth graders. You have to. This is the mean average of like the American intellectual capacity. And it doesn't mean that everybody's an idiot. It means that like Republicanism has learned a very stiff lesson and they've gotten it pretty quick. And I think Bush too, I think Bush Jr. was kind of the herald of this era of the kind of like colloquial fourth grade English, we're just trying to, get after them kind of energy. And it's like, it doesn't actually matter what you're doing. But Democrats have this horrible tendency of over explaining themselves and thinking that people are listening, and it's like, look, man, we all kind of understand that we don't have a lot of insight into the backdoor dealings of the political system. Your main job as a top level politician is to say things people understand. And they've gotten the brief. Unfortunately, Republicans have gotten the brief.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a predictive-ish question.
Yeah.
Or I'm not sure how to frame it exactly, but we have Tulsi Gabbard that is being praised by Russia Today nonstop as like, oh, Tulsi's awesome. Like, they tweet that nonstop. Literally, they say that like Tulsi's amazing.
Damn.
We have J.D. Vance and Trump and Elon who all have, I mean, Trump has business interests in Russia, or he did have like a lot of them.
Sure.
Who knows how deep those ties go? We have JD, who just like parrots anything that owns the libs and is kind of like pro authoritarian.
Right.
And then there's Musk, who is just like, he will never say a bad word about China ever.
Right.
And apparently never says anything bad about Putin either, for whatever reason. Okay, so we have this crowd of people, plus others in the administration who just like Trump bootlickers go along with all. How bad is this, Devin? Like, I know that we're pulling back from the world and we're giving up like the narrative for like global hegemony and everything, but how bad is this? Are we going to be, are we the bad guys?
I don't, Peter, it's funny because I think it's kind of a moot point because we're still like the largest, most badass, most psycho country. And it just doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, until something functionally cripples our military or political or social system, which nothing really has been able to. I mean, the pandemic couldn't even fucking touch American power, and it killed a bunch of people and scared the shit out of everybody. And what happened? Government gave everybody a bunch of money and made it work. You know what I'm saying? And like, I think that the adversarial relationship that we have to China and Russia is like, it's a war game. It's not a hot war. It's not even a cold war because we're just not even playing on the same level of power, the same level of influence. They're using soft power. They're using kind of, manipulative backdoor stuff to try to subtly weaken the United States. But we still live in a world where physical strength actually controls the map. And like the United States, just until another country becomes, has 100 years of uninterrupted industrialization and exhumes 97% of its people out of poverty, there's just nobody that's going to be able to compete with us on a global scale in any dimension, unless
Well, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm worried about like practical things in
Like
terms of, okay, so let's just take Russia and China. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I mean, our economy is fucked as long as Trump's in office and keeps doing this tariff thing. Like, it's just not like it's not going to be good. I think that's a given. And he's that's sidebar. But I'm very unimpressed with Trump's economic policy so far. I'll put it that way. And I'm willing to give him so many bones on that. I'm so like down to like go with him down those rabbit holes.
I know. Come on, business guy.
He's failing at everything I'd want him to do. But like Russia wants to topple Europe, like full stop. Like he is Napoleon, he's Caesar, he's Hitler. Like he wants to topple Europe, and there's no like ifs, ands, or buts about that. That's what he wants, right? At some level, he wants the USSR, but like he ain't stopping there, right? Like
it's like a child. It's like a child trying to break into like a bank, or like you know what I mean? Like there's just what multiverse does Russia have? They can't even fucking beat Ukraine.
Well, this was his world because apparently he's badly informed, right? Because like he doesn't like his generals don't tell him the true information because they might get like killed, thrown out a window, sort of thing. So he thought that he was going to topple Ukraine and march into Kyiv and like take it over in 3 days, and then like put in a puppet leader there. That's what he thought. So like he's not operating on like a basis of reality, I don't think. But that's what he wants, right? And then and they have a lot of interests in Northern Africa that they want to be able to control all of the mines in Africa, and they want to kick the French out and kick the U.S. out. So they have like global ambitions for like raw resources and raw power. Same thing with China. They want to take over Taiwan, and they have interest in Southeast Asia, and I'm sure beyond that. And they also have interests in Africa. And they have, spies all up and down our government, probably every government in the world, right? Like they have a vision for how humanity should be run, and it's very anti-democratic, like super hardcore authoritarian, zero free speech. I mean, like it's a version of our values fundamentally. And human by human, person by person, they, like Russia and China, want to make more people like believe in those values, which are contrary to our values. So like, I think that any encroachment that they do on any of those levels, any of those playing fields, it's bad for the future of freedom and humanity. Good for the future of like authoritarians and anti-freedom.
See, I don't know that we're going to go back. I think we're still in a holdover mentality from World War II. When that generation of people dies off, I really do think that the world becomes a gentler place. Because
I hope you're right, Devin. I
no,
hope you're
I
right.
really
I
do.
talked to a guy yesterday who's I haven't dropped his episode yet, but he has his whole theory. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but let me,
No.
since it's here. He has this theory that we're going to start in this like generation, start losing our egos a little bit more and having more connection with like a global consciousness. It's so beautiful of an idea. I don't really want to like pick at it too much, but like I'm not seeing it happening, but I love that. Maybe that's kind of what you're saying too, that like this generation let them die off and then.
I see it happening because I'm surrounded by young people, and I try to make sure that that's the case. I don't know. It's just kind of like, as an artist, I think it's something important for me to do. There just isn't a lot of roughness to life anymore. It's a lot of feigned roughness. It's like the rancher drives an F-350 with climate control and Bluetooth. You know, like everybody that's living in a city is living pretty comfortable. And far beyond that, like, you know, we talk about like poverty in this country and stuff, but I'm like, everybody's got a fucking smartphone. You know?
Wait,
like,
hold on. I want to articulate this a little bit because this is interesting. This is maybe just like an actual theory for how we could become like anti-egoic or whatever. Life becomes softer. We just become more feminized and more soft and pampered,
gentle,
just by the world and our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
And that makes us more gentle, and that maybe makes us less macho egocentric. Is that, this could be like, this is testable. This is like a testable theory. I like this.
In my anecdotal experience, it's inarguable that is the direction that like, and like we said, we were talking about in the last one, like this like utopian experiment of neoliberalism and how it's failed. Well, it doesn't, the most extreme version of it has failed. All of the kind of low-lying common sense things that were core to the neoliberal fantasy, like a lot of that stuff is actually just in practice now. Like we do have a lot of inclusive behaviors. We do like we have marched towards stamping out racism and sexism. We are trying to create an actual equity and equality between genders. We are like, a lot of that stuff is happening, and there's people fighting at the tip of the spear. But the post of the you know, at the base of the spear is still thrusting forward to bring people up into the light. And that's something that this country has been faithful about. I mean, given, you know, a lot of the time when people are brought up into the middle class or brought up into a more intellectually or emotionally wealthy existence for themselves, they're shackled by something else in that space, like pharmaceuticals or like poison in the food or like the environmental or like an environmental degradation that's causing cancer in a community or something like that. But we're talking about you're in a higher order of existence now, where you have a lot, nobody's really threatening you with physical violence. You have access to basically every piece of information humans have ever gathered. And like, most people have economic freedom, whether they think so or not. I mean, like, if
okay, hold on. Let me I just want to jump in with
please.
Okay, so this is interesting. Okay, we've been talking a lot about Russia and China. So Russia, 1/3 of Russians still don't have like running water.
Right.
And they go to war all the time. They're always invading their neighbors and do like doing boots on ground stuff. China has lifted more people out of poverty than any country ever, in like the quickest time ever. They all live in cities and like they live somewhat comfortably, as from what I understand.
Yeah.
China never goes to war. Like we talk about it all the time, and they might want to invade Taiwan maybe, but like who knows what's going to happen there. Their track record again is just like not going to war. What they do is they do soft power stuff like building bridges in poor countries.
Yep.
So if you just take China and Russia there, I know that they both are kind of like nefarious in terms of like American interests, but like China's on that path of they are like living in more of a softer life, and they're not. I don't know enough about any of this, but I like this parallel here.
And like I think that we forget that the Chinese political system is only 70 years old, right?
Yeah.
Like China was a democracy like really, really short time ago, and like I think have gotten used to the
I mean, were they ever properly, because the democratic wing of them fled to Taiwan, and that's why Taiwan is a democracy and China is not, because like they lost that war, and then the dictatorship type thing, the communist one. So was China mainland China proper ever
not in a Republican sense, but I think of them in the same way that I think of a place like Iran, where like they enjoyed a time that was free, you know, that wasn't really encumbered by, and like where normal people were able to live a life that is in that shared a proximity to the freedom that we enjoy as a democratic republic here for a short amount of time. And even though the political system has been dominated by communism and by like dictatorship, you know, for the last 70 years, I mean, this is still a population that rose up, right? Like this is still
I mean, like there are all those different cities along the coast that were, I mean, Hong Kong and everything that had a lot of Western influence, like founded by the British and stuff like that. And a lot of them, up until just a couple of years ago, were somewhat autonomous from Beijing. And I think like to this day, I'm pretty sure a lot of those like cities in southern China, they still look at themselves as somewhat autonomous from Beijing, and they want to be more democratic. And there's a lot of that like deep in some of those pockets of China, from what I understand. I am so far out of my depth here, though, that I don't know.
A little bit.
I probably shouldn't be talking.
A little bit, me too. But we know enough about enough. I mean, like I think that, you know, also the sentiment of Chinese people, I think broadly, is that they are feeling whiplash from the ham-fisted kind of policies of their government, because, you know, you take something like the one child policy, where for, you know, decades and decades they were like, oh, one kid, you know, there's too many people, which is one dude. It's like one dude's harebrained fucking scheme to like control the population or whatever. Stupid, absolutely insane. Now the same women that they were, you know, basically ruining their lives, making them pay tens of thousands of dollars for having a second or a third child, they're now calling these women on the phone, local political representatives calling these women on the phone and saying, hey, wouldn't you love to have an extra child? And you're just like, bro, this is French Revolution shit, dude. Like,
yeah, that is insane.
Fuck with people a lot. But as soon as people start feeling the whiplash of somebody's personal decision-making apparatus being kind of like irrelevant to the lives of normal people, like people actually don't take that forever, man. And I think that
totally. The human spirit doesn't thrive in
No, and the human spirit is indomitable. You know, it just takes time sometimes. And I think that Russians have the benefit of having a really strong identity that's kind of ancient and based around cultural things. And China has that too, right? Like China's like, you know, arguably the most ancient culture. But I feel like the way in which their political system is seeking to control all aspects of their life and is authoritarian and is like a techno state that's using AI and is using cameras and is like a privacy, you know, there's no privacy there. You can't talk about stuff. There's no free internet. I mean, it's like, you can be the Mormon kid on the block that isn't allowed to eat cereal, you're gonna eat cereal as soon as you go over to your friend's house. You know what I mean? I'm like,
that's actually a good way to look at that. You're right.
They can see what's going on with the rest of the world. I just talked with a mainland Chinese person when I was in Nashville, who was an artist and kind of a dissident. And I was like, just really curiously kind of picking his brain on all this stuff. And he was like, I was like, why do you think 30,000 Chinese people came here last year? And I, you know, me, I'm like, fucking like,
oh, interesting.
I'm like, I'm listening for the code word. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that a lot of those people were sent here by the Chinese government. But I don't know. That's a conspiracy theory, truly. But he was like, it's just really bad there right now. He's like, it's just really bad. He's like, you don't have freedom. Like, he's like, I just had a friend of mine taken to jail for using Facebook, you know. Whoa. And like, oof. You know, it's like people know like family members and shit who are doing like normal people behaviors and getting like taken away by the Gestapo, you know what I'm saying? And like that type of power, you don't get to hold on to that forever. No, there's no country, no culture, no political system that survived in that type of environment for very long at all in the scope.
You know what's so weird about that example, Devin, is that even Europe is totally doing that sort of thing right now. Like Germany has all these laws on the books about how if you say certain things online, you go to jail. Right. And I mean, even England basically has that sort of a thing. Right, and it's a lot of like normal stuff that you just can't say online, or like literally police knock on your door, which to Americans is just like crazy. And this is why the right wing RFD party or whatever it is in Germany, you know, has grown so exponentially recently and almost, you know, came into power over this last election cycle. People do not like that. And like, man, just hearing those stories makes me be all JD Vancey and like pro that party, you know, because it's like that is just not okay. And I think that JD Vance and Elon and those folks are total hypocrites when it comes to free speech. But man, like that's a thing we got to push back on and shame the hell out of Europe for doing that sort of stuff, because it's bad. It's just not good.
It's crazy. It's like we're doing something that works here, and it's ugly and it's messy and it's not the sexiest thing to a homogenous country with like a shared cultural history. We don't have that here. We don't try to, you know, I think the point of I think at the moment, the point of the American experiment is how strong and wide can we make the bumpers on existence to where it allows for the most ability of the most slop in between. And then when it hits a wall, it stops. And it's like, that is how this country works. It's we have so many laws that protect people's physical safety. We have very few laws that protect people's intellectual, emotional reality, you know, identity or any of that stuff. And it's like, I love that about this country. I think, unfortunately, we still don't live in a beautiful, gentle world where there's no assholes and nobody's going to say mean things to you. And it's like, well, I don't know. Tell your spirit to get born in a different time next time, because that's just the world we live in. And this country does protect your physical safety most of the time for most people. And it's getting better at that as we go on. Certainly certain groups have been left out and certain groups have been not protected historically, but we're moving towards a reality in which that's not true. And like every other country that tries to every other country that's policing people's morality, policing people's intellectual safety or their emotional safety, and like that's a futile mission. You're never going to make everybody feel safe and happy, and we know that because the neoliberal experiment fucking failed. You know, it doesn't work, man, because as soon as you tell somebody, hey, we're gonna validate your existence, they go, well, I've got these second and third order things that I'd like validated too. You know, it's like, we're going to say that like you are whoever you say you are. And they're like, well, I also would like to be treated nicely. And it's like, well, fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not how it works yet. I don't know what to fucking tell you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm disappointed in the Trump administration. Maybe just one last time to go back to it, just because I think that they really could have been, or they could have done a lot of good in the world being pro free speech, but instead the way that they're doing it, they're just ostracizing our allies, and it's just not good. And there's just so much hypocrisy on their side too, that I don't think anybody who pays attention can and should take them seriously. So, I mean, you know, for example, like Elon Musk on Twitter, he's just dialing back community notes because he said that community notes were taken over by or overly influenced by foreign governments. And he said that just because he kept getting community noted, because he kept saying dumb, false shit. And so there would be community note like, no, actually, like the sky is blue, Elon. You know what I mean? It'd be that level of like obviousness. Totally. And so he dialed back community notes so that he personally wouldn't be. And that is, I'm like, sorry, that's like not. That ruins your whole project of being like, oh, you're for like the truth coming out, etc. And I don't know.
Well, but I think that's an important distinction to draw, is that free speech isn't about the truth, right? It's not. It's just about free speech. You know, it's about saying whatever the fuck you want to say. And like, I think a lot
free speech on a platform though, and because we're supposed to be able to correct. This is what free speech advocates always say, is that from everyone having their perspective, that's how the truth will come out. And that's what community notes was supposed to be. It's an aggregate of people who aren't, you know, necessarily aligned with whoever's saying anything. It's an aggregate of them like commenting, and other people like check it. And then it's like through the community, through all the voices, the truth will come out. Yes, everyone gets to see what they want, but like at some level, part of that process is like not stamping down voices you don't like. And that's what Elon is doing. He is stamping down voices he does not like. And that's anti-free speech.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just have such a muddled view of what apps have anything to do with any of this, where I'm just like,
oh, kind of nothing. I only bring up Elon and Twitter just because he's supposed to be Mr. Free Speech, and he just stamps down speech he doesn't like. Like he puts his boot on speech he doesn't like, him personally. So he just can't be taken seriously, I think, on that topic.
I think so too. I'm like, the whole like, I don't know, like the way that we're having this hybrid moment where we're asking private companies to regulate themselves, where I'm just like, again, like not really the way the system works. You know what I'm saying? It's like the system is built a very specific way. It's exploitative. It's generally trying to protect the core values of things that we consider to be important. And then as soon as we start getting into second and third order kind of like removals from those like physical core tenets, where we're saying like, oh, well, there's this new technology. And I'm like, well, then you lost me there, because we just don't, what are we talking about? Free speech. It's like, if you own a business, you can tell people to say whatever the fuck you want. Like you can't.
To be clear, I totally agree. I think any platform can set their own rules to do whatever they want, and I totally am on board with that. Elon can do whatever he wants. I just don't think that he can, with a straight face, say I'm a straight free speech absolutist, and then like only allow speech that makes him look good. You know, I just think that 100%. Him personally, that makes him a hypocrite. But platform wise, totally go for it, Elon. Do whatever the hell you want on your platform. Just like don't pretend to be upholding some value when you're absolutely blatantly not. You know. So anyway,
No, I completely agree with that, and I think we're in this moment that I really don't love, which is like just the kind of the childlikeness of our leaders at the moment to just kind of like say something and like stamp their feet about it a little bit. And then that's like, I'm like, we're in a backlash moment. You know, I'm old enough to have seen what happens when something shifts too far one way and what it feels like when there's a backlash to it. And like, we're in a backlash moment to the over intellectualization, the kind of scholastic attitude of politics. And like, we've seen this happen a lot actually in our country, where we'll have a president like Obama, and then we'll have a president like Trump, you know, where it's like somebody that's very collegiate, very well reasoned, very explanatory of what's going on and blah, blah, blah. And I think that as we go further into meme culture, as we go further into the internet being the more functional, most functional part,
Robots taking over.
the robots taking over, the singularity,
gods.
when we merge with, when the transhumanists finally stage
The
their
chip in the
takeover,
brain to connect our brains to the cloud.
when
Yeah.
Neuralink is actually controlling all of us via fucking remote control. Oh my God,
When we
man.
wake up from the Matrix anyway, and all this was just a dream to begin with. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know.
Our next one needs to be a futurist podcast because there's so many cool futurist things that are happening right now with like quantum computing and transhumanism, and like, man,
let's do that. Let's get back to the basics. Yeah,
I think so, man. I mean, I do love talking about politics because it is futurist and the most functional.
Right now it is. Yeah, I think that the fate of the world, like Western democracies, and the rise of the authoritarian, I think that like futurism is tied into this 100%. Like the future, literally, of our lives is dependent on how the winds blow in these directions. But you're right. Technology also matters so much more than the average person, I think, gives it credit for. And let's get back to the basics on that. I like it.